His dead mother disguised him to find a wife, a heartwarming tale of a mother's love that crosses death, a disguised prince seeking truth, and a humble village girl whose kindness changed her world. Through trials, betrayal, forgiveness, and community, their love became a legend, whispered from lips of old to ears of the young. In a quiet village called Umwahia, there lived a boy named Obinna. He was tall, dark-skinned, and always walked with his head low. His heart was soft like yam porridge, and his voice was gentle like the evening breeze. But Obinna had one big problem. He was very shy, especially around women. Obinna's mother, Mama Njideka, had died 2 seasons ago. She was known in the village as a kind, wise woman. Even in death, her love for her only son refused to sleep. They said when Mama Njideka was buried, the birds stopped singing for 3 days. The village mourned her deeply, but something strange happened after her burial. Obinna began to see her in his dreams. Not once, not twice, every night. Obinna sat under the udala tree near his hut. He watched couples laughing by the stream, girls carrying calabashes, boys chasing goats. He sighed. "Mama, I wish you were here," he whispered. At 21, Obinna had never had a girlfriend. Not because he was ugly, no, he was quite handsome. But because he didn't know how to talk to women. Every girl he admired either laughed at him or ignored him. That night, as the moon glowed like a lantern in the sky, he slept on his raffia mat. Then, she came again. "Mama?" Obinna sat up in his dream. She was dressed in her old white wrapper with red beads around her neck, just like the day she was buried. But her face was glowing, her eyes full of peace. "My son," she said, "you must find a wife." "Mama, I don't know how," Obinna cried. "You don't need to know how," she replied. "You only need to listen." Mama Njideka walked toward him and touched his forehead. "Tomorrow morning, you must go to the forest behind our farm. There you will find something, and someone." Then she faded. Obinna woke up in sweat. Was it just a dream? At sunrise, Obinna obeyed the dream. He tied his wrapper, grabbed his small cutlass, and walked into the thick green forest behind the farm. Birds chirped above. The earth smelled wet. He kept walking until he saw a small clearing and something lying on the ground. A bag of old clothes, a small mirror, and a bottle filled with red powder. "What is this?" he asked aloud. Then a voice whispered in the wind. "Use it." Without knowing why, Obinna took the items home. That night, Mama Njideka came again. She smiled. "You will disguise yourself," she said, "so the right woman will see your heart, not your face." Obinna blinked. "But why, Mama?" "Because many girls only look at beauty and riches. You need someone who sees the real you." With the mirror, Obinna's skin became rough and dark like burnt firewood. The powder added tribal marks to his face. He looked like a poor farmer from a faraway village. "Mama, is this really me?" he asked, staring at his new face. "Yes," she said. "Now go. Tomorrow, you shall join the Festival of Maidens and Seekers." The next day, the village square buzzed with excitement. Every year, young men came from different places to look for wives. It was called the Festival of Maidens and Seekers. Girls wore their best beads. Some danced, others cooked sweet-smelling soups. Obinna joined the crowd, now fully disguised. No one recognized him. Not even his friend Okeke. As he stood by the tree near the dancing circle, 2 girls noticed him. One with a kind smile, another with sharp eyes. Their names were Nkiru and Ikeoma, but they did not know who he really was. Nkiru was the quiet type. She always helped her blind grandmother sell pepper in the market. People said she was too plain. Ikeoma was different. She had many admirers and loved to show off. Nkiru whispered to her friend, "That poor man looks gentle." Ikeoma laughed. "Gentle? He looks like a goat herder. Probably has lice in his wrapper." But Obinna said nothing. He simply watched. He had to choose wisely, and so, The test began. Every year, during the Festival of Maidens and Seekers, the village elder, Chief Ofoma, gave a special task. The man who passed the task would be allowed to choose any maiden who agreed to marry him. Chief Ofoma stood in the middle of the square, his tall red cap sitting firmly on his head. His eyes scanned the crowd. "This year," he said in his loud voice, "every seeker must perform a task. But the task will not test your strength. It will test your heart," the crowd murmured. Some young men looked worried. Obinna, still in disguise, folded his arms quietly. Chief Ofome's servants brought out 5 clay pots, each covered with a white cloth. He said, "Inside one of these pots is a burning ember that can cook a meal. The rest hold only cold ash. Each man will choose a pot. The girl he asks to cook with it must accept. If her meal cooks, she is the one for you." The crowd gasped. It was a test of trust and spirit. A woman's character would decide the outcome. Obinna touched his heart. "Mama, guide me." Each disguised seeker was asked to choose one maiden who would cook a meal using the pot they picked. The first man chose Ekioma. She smiled proudly. "Of course I will cook. I know how to handle fire." The crowd laughed. Another man picked a loud girl named Adalgo. She screamed, "Let's cook this test!" Obinna stepped forward. He held out his hand gently toward Nkiru. People whispered, "Why would he pick that plain girl?" Nkiru looked around shyly, then stepped forward. "I will try," she said. All 5 maidens placed their cooking pots over stones. Each added water and yam slices. But only one pot began to bubble and steam. Ekioma's face tightened. "Why is mine cold?" Others shouted, "Mine is not boiling!" But in the far corner of the square, smoke rose from one pot. It was Nkiru's. Her yam was softening, and the aroma reached the air. People rushed to see. They clapped and shouted. Obinna blinked. He didn't expect it to work. Nkiru was smiling. "Maybe I was just lucky," she said. But deep down, she knew. It was more than luck. Ekioma stomped toward Chief Ofoma. "This is not fair!" she shouted. "My pot was fake!" But Chief Ofoma only laughed. "Maybe your heart was cold, like the ash inside." The crowd roared with laughter. Ekioma ran away in tears. Obinna turned to Nkiru. "You believed in me, even though I looked like a stranger." She nodded. "You seemed gentle. That's all I saw." He smiled. His heart began to soften. Could this be the one? That night, Obinna sat under the moonlight behind his hut. He stared at the stars. Then Mama Njidika appeared again. "She is the one," she said. Obinna smiled. "But should I tell her who I am?" Mama Njidika shook her head. "Not yet. Let her love your heart first. The time for truth will come." Obinna nodded, but far away someone was watching. Ekioma, full of anger and plans. The real test was not over. Ekioma could not sleep. Her pride was wounded. "How can a common-looking girl beat me?" She hissed. She began asking around, following the man who picked Nkiru. She noticed something strange. He never removed his shirt. He always avoided bright light. Ekioma followed him one morning into the bush path and caught him talking to himself. But it wasn't just himself. He was talking to air. But in the air, a glowing woman stood. Ekioma gasped, "Is that a ghost?" That evening, Ekioma confronted Obinna in public. "You are not who you say you are," she screamed. The villagers gathered. "What do you mean?" Obinna asked calmly. "I saw you talking to a ghost. And your face, it's painted. You're rich, a liar." The crowd gasped. Nkiru stepped forward. "Is it true?" Obinna sighed. He removed the disguise, the fake scars, the ash, the rough voice. Gasps again. He stood tall and clean. His skin shone. "I am Obinna, son of Mama Njidika. I came disguised to find a true heart." Nkiru looked at Obinna, tears gathering in her eyes. "So, it was all a lie?" Obinna stepped forward. No, everything else was true, except my face. But why me? Because you saw me, not what I wore. You trusted me when others laughed. You had the kind of heart my mother said to look for. Nkiru said nothing. She turned and walked away. The villagers were silent. That night, Mama Njidika's spirit returned. She is hurt, she said. Obinna sighed. I didn't want to hurt her. Then, fight for her heart, Mama said gently. But don't beg. Let her spirit choose. Obinna asked, will she ever forgive me? Mama Njidika nodded. Only if your heart is true and humble. Then her spirit faded again. Nkiru sat beside her blind grandmother, holding her hand. Mama, she said, he lied to me. Her grandmother smiled gently. Nkiru showed you truth with his actions. That is the man to trust. But he is a rich man, Nkiru whispered. What if he wants a rich wife? Her grandmother touched her cheek. He chose you when you had nothing. That night, Nkiru cried, but they were tears of love and confusion. The next day was the final day of the Festival of Maidens and Seekers. The custom, every maiden would walk past every seeker. If she touched his hand, she accepted him. Obinna stood at the edge of the circle. Ekioma walked past and laughed in his face. Then Nkiru approached. The whole village held its breath. She stopped before him. Their eyes met. Obinna did not speak. Nkiru reached out and held his hand. The crowd burst into cheers. Obinna smiled, eyes full of tears. That night, as the village danced to drums and flutes celebrating the new couple, a cold wind swept through the air. Suddenly, the fire at the center of the square flickered wildly. A child screamed, "Look! Look in the sky!" And there, floating above the dancers, was the glowing spirit of Mama Njidika. Only a few could see her clearly. One of them was Nkiru. The ghost said just one thing: protect your heart. The test is not over. Then she vanished into the wind. The next morning, Ekeoma came to Nkiru's hut, holding a calabash of soup. "My sister," she smiled sweetly. "I bring peace. Let us be friends." Nkiru was surprised but smiled politely. "Thank you," she said, taking the soup. But just as she was about to taste it, her blind grandmother reached out and knocked it to the ground. The soup spilled, and a dead lizard floated to the top. "Poison!" her grandmother cried. Nkiru stared at Ekeoma in horror, but Ekeoma was already running away. When Obinna heard what happened, his hands shook with rage. "She tried to poison you?" He stormed to Ekeoma's family compound, but Ekeoma's father had locked her inside. "She has brought shame to this house," he cried. Obinna turned away, fists clenched. "I won't let anyone harm her again," he whispered to himself. Then he did something surprising. He went to Chief Ofuma and asked for permission to marry Nkiru officially the next day. "I've seen enough," he said. "She is the one." That night, Mama Njidika appeared again. This time, not to Obinna, but to Nkiru. Nkiru sat outside under a mango tree thinking when the air shimmered. Mama Njidika stood before her, glowing and beautiful. "Thank you," she said. "You have a heart of gold." Nkiru knelt down. "I did nothing. You chose love without greed. You forgave. You listened. You are worthy." Then the ghost smiled and touched her head. "You are now my daughter, too." And just like that, she faded. The wedding day arrived, but just before it began, dark clouds gathered. Rain poured from the sky. Everyone ran for shelter, except Obinna and Nkiru. They stood in the rain, hand in hand, smiling. "I don't need a crowd," Obinna replied. "I only need you." Chief Ofome appeared, laughing under an umbrella. "If rain is your blessing, so be it. I join you both as husband and wife." The villagers returned, cheering. Rain or not, it was a wedding of joy. Weeks passed. One day, Obinna and Nkiru were walking to the stream when they saw Ekeoma, sitting alone, thin and sad. She bowed her head. I was wrong. Nkiru looked at her for a long time, then walked forward and hugged her. Let peace live between us, she said. Ikioma began to cry. She finally smiled, truly this time. And just like that, the village healed. Mama Njideka never appeared again, because her son had found his bride, and her soul could rest. Months passed. On a quiet morning, the sound of hammers and wood filled the air. Obinna was building, not just a house, but a home. Nkiru stood beside him, holding a clay water pot and smiling. The house was large but simple, with wide windows and a garden filled with her favorite flowers. At the heart of it, Obinna built a small round hut attached to the house, painted white. That's for Mama Njideka, he said. So, her spirit always has a place here. Nkiru wiped a tear. Nkiru started a small farm beside the house. She planted yam, maize, and okra. But more than food, she planted hope. Soon, the villagers came to her for advice. You don't need big land to grow plenty, she would say. Obinna watched as Nkiru became something more than his wife. She was a teacher, a sister, a leader. Even the children loved her. Teach us to farm, they shouted. Nkiru would laugh. Only if you sing while planting. And they did. One market day, Nkiru called the village women together under a mango tree. She stood with a chalkboard and spoke. We can start a women's saving group. If we put something small every week, we can support each other. At first, they laughed. What do you know, small girl? But Nkiru smiled gently. I know how to survive with nothing. I know how to build with love. And I know how to share. That day, the first Undiine savings group began, and it changed the village forever. Obinna carved a wooden statue of his mother. He placed it in the center of the white hut. On the plaque, he wrote, To Mama Njideka, who raised me even in death. People came from far to see it. They left prayers, food, and songs. Some claimed they could still feel her presence. Nkiru lit a candle there every evening. She gave you to me, she whispered, and I'll carry her name in how I love you. Obinna kissed her forehead. She chose well. Ikioma worked hard on her father's farm. She no longer wore fine clothes or heavy makeup. But her heart was light, and her hands were busy. One evening, she walked to Nkiru's home with fresh melon seeds. For your farm, she said quietly. Nkiru smiled and hugged her again. You're growing, she whispered. And she was. Soon after, Ikioma joined the women's savings group. She began teaching younger girls to weave baskets. Once bitter, now she was blooming. Years later, children sat in the square, begging for stories. Tell us about the ghost mama, one child shouted. An elder smiled. She disguised her son to find a wife with a good heart. And did he find her? They asked. Yes, the elder said. She wasn't the finest or the richest, but she had kindness and courage. Are they still alive? The elder pointed to a large compound nearby. They live right there. But their love, it lives in all of us now. And the drums began again. The end.